Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Rain fell in silver sheets across Gotham's skyline, transforming the city into a shimmering dreamscape of reflected light and deepening shadows. From his vantage point atop the Wayne Tower, Batman stood motionless, the water cascading over his cape in rivulets that joined the cityscape below. For 7 nights the rain had been constant, a cleansing deluge that somehow made the darkness feel more complete. But water, no matter how persistent, could not wash away what had happened in those 7 nights. "The scene at the docks has been cleared, sir." Alfred's measured voice came through the cow's communication system. "Commissioner Gordon reports that forensics found precisely what you predicted. Nothing." Batman's gaze remained fixed on the city spread beneath him. "She's evolving, Alfred, becoming more precise with each target." "Indeed. 4 of Gotham's most notorious crime lords eliminated in a week, each death more elegant than the last." There was a thoughtful pause before Alfred continued. "The commissioner mentioned that several of his detectives found the lack of evidence almost beautiful. His word, not mine." Batman understood. There was an artistry to the killings that disturbed him more than their brutality. Each victim had been dispatched with such perfect efficiency that death seemed almost incidental, the culmination of a flawless equation rather than an act of violence. "Lady Shiva," he said quietly, the name itself carrying weight in the rain-heavy air. "You're certain, then? No one else moves like her?" Batman's mind replayed the single security footage that had captured anything useful. 3 seconds of a shadow flowing through the Triad leader's penthouse, barely distinguishable from the darkness itself. Most would have dismissed it as a camera glitch, but Batman recognized the economy of movement, the perfect balance that allowed her to exist between moments. "She doesn't waste a single motion, doesn't leave a single trace. Except for her calling card," Alfred noted. Each victim had been found with a single white lotus petal placed over their eyes, a symbol of purity amid corruption. The message was clear to those who understood Shiva's philosophy. These deaths were not merely executions, but purifications. In her mind, she was not taking life, but releasing corrupted souls to find better vessels. Lightning fractured the sky, momentarily turning Gotham's shadows into harsh relief. Batman used the moment to move, dropping from his perch and allowing his cape to catch the updraft between buildings. He glided through the rain-soaked night, the cowl's enhanced vision adjusting to the constantly changing patterns of light and darkness. "I've compiled the dossiers you requested," Alfred continued as Batman descended toward the narrow streets of Chinatown. 4 victims, ostensibly without connection beyond their criminal enterprises, yet each controlled territory that bordered on the next. "Someone's consolidating power," Batman replied, landing silently on a pagoda-styled rooftop. Water streamed from his cape as he crouched among stone dragons that seemed almost alive in the rain. "Using Shiva as their instrument. A dangerous proposition, employing someone of her particular ethics. Batman agreed silently. Lady Shiva did not serve, she tested. Whoever had brought her to Gotham was playing with forces they couldn't possibly control, like trying to direct a hurricane's path. Below him, Chinatown continued its nighttime rhythm despite the downpour. Street vendors huddled beneath awnings, steam from food carts mingling with the rain to create a perpetual mist. The neon signs reflecting in puddles transformed ordinary streets into watercolor paintings of vibrant color. Among this living tableau moved ordinary people, unaware of the deadly current that had been introduced to their world. "The fifth name on your list," Alfred said. "Master Chen Wei. Are you certain he's next? His territory connects the others, and unlike the previous victims, he's aware he's being targeted." Batman's enhanced vision scanned the building across from Chen's restaurant. He's increased security substantially. Indeed, the reinforcements were evident, even to casual observation. More guards at the entrances, private security mingling with clientele, subtle surveillance equipment covering approaches. Chen, unlike his now deceased contemporaries, had recognized the pattern of death moving through Gotham's underworld. "Which may explain why she hasn't struck yet," Alfred observed. "Lady Shiva historically avoids confrontations that lack aesthetic merit." "She's watching him," Batman replied, catching a glimpse of movement on a rooftop 2 buildings away, one of Chen's sentries adjusting position, studying his defenses. For her, the challenge is part of the purpose. The perfect kill rather than merely a successful one. Alfred's tone carried philosophical weight, a distinction that separates the true artist from the mere professional. Batman continued his surveillance, analyzing each of Chen's security measures while simultaneously scanning for the assassin he knew must be doing the same. The rain shifted subtly, driven by changing winds, creating new patterns against the city's geometry. In those patterns, a trained eye might discern opportunities. Approaches that would be momentarily obscured, angles that would briefly align. "There's something else we should consider, sir," Alfred said after a thoughtful silence. "The timing. 7 nights of rain, 4 victims thus far. The number holds significance in certain philosophical tradition." Batman had already made the connection. 7 steps to enlightenment, 4 corruptions to overcome. Precisely. If Lady Shiva is following such symbolism, then she's building towards something specific. Batman's gaze shifted to the temple at the end of the street, an ancient structure that had been standing since Gotham's earliest days. Not just eliminating targets, but creating a pattern, a ritual. He moved across the rooftops with practiced grace, each motion calculated to disturb the rainfall as little as possible. The temple's traditional architecture offered numerous approaches, but Batman chose the least obvious, descending to street level and moving through the crowd before ascending again, via the building's ornate stonework. The temple's roof garden offered seclusion amidst carefully maintained bonsai trees and stone lanterns that glowed with warm light despite the rain. At its center, seated in perfect meditation despite the downpour, was the figure Batman had come to find. Master Dao's weathered face showed no surprise as Batman emerged from the shadows. The elderly martial artist remained motionless, the rain seeming to flow around rather than upon him, as though his decades of discipline had earned him respect from the elements themselves. "I wondered when you would come," Master Tao said, his voice carrying clearly despite its softness. "You seek knowledge of the woman who walks between raindrops." Batman approached respectfully, understanding the protocols that governed this world. 4 men are dead, a fifth is targeted. And you believe stopping her will change what is already in motion? Master Tao opened his eyes, their deep brown holding wisdom earned through years of studying both combat and philosophy. The rain falls where it must, Batman. Individual drops cannot change its purpose. I'm not interested in metaphors, Batman replied, though he moderated his tone. Lady Shiva is in Gotham. I need to understand what she wants. Master Tao considered him for a long moment before gesturing to the space across from him. Sit. If you wish to understand the ghost of the rain, you must first understand stillness. Batman hesitated only briefly before complying, adopting the formal meditation posture that mirrored the elders. The rain continued around them, but in the space between their focused concentration, a different kind of clarity emerged. She was once my student, Master Tao said after their breathing had synchronized naturally. Many years ago, before her path diverged from what I could teach, she sought not just mastery but transcendence, the perfect unity of body and spirit that comes only when one has faced death and understood its true nature. She's an assassin, Batman stated. She is an artist whose medium is mortality, the master corrected gently. Each life she takes is chosen with specific purpose, not for money, though she accepts payment, but for the challenge that particular death presents to her skills. Batman processed this against what he already knew of Shiva's methods. The victims so far have all been protected by extensive security. Each presented unique challenges, and each fell with a single strike. Master Tao's eyes reflected the lantern light. This is her signature, the perfect economy of force. In her philosophy, to require more than one action to accomplish death is to admit imperfection. The white lotus petals? Symbols of rebirth. In placing them, she honors those whose deaths have contributed to her own perfection. The elderly master's expression softened with what might have been regret. She believes she liberates her targets from lives of spiritual corruption, that through her they find a purer path in whatever comes after. Lightning illuminated the garden, casting stark shadows across their meditation space. In that brief electric moment, Batman caught a fleeting expression on Master Tao's face, a recognition of something beyond their conversation. You've been in contact with her, Batman realized. Master Tao inclined his head slightly. She pays respect to her former teachers. It would be impolite not to acknowledge her presence in the city. Did she tell you who hired her? Lady Shiva is not hired in the way you imagine. She accepts payment as recognition of the value she provides, but she chooses her targets based on her own criteria. The Master's eyes held Batman steadily. However, she did share that her current work serves two purposes: the consolidation of power for her employer and the drawing out of a worthy opponent. The implication was clear. She wants to face me. She has heard of your skills, your discipline. In her mind, you represent perhaps the only challenge Gotham can offer her. Master Tao's voice remained calm, yet carried a distinct note of warning. To her, facing you would be the culmination of this particular journey. Win or lose, she would achieve the perfect moment of truth that all martial artists ultimately seek. Batman absorbed this information, integrating it with the pattern of killings and the building storm outside. The timing matters. 7 nights of rain. Why now? There is a moment approaching, what some traditions call the parting of veils, when the physical and spiritual worlds draw closest. Master Dao gestured to the rain. Water is the medium through which such transitions occur most naturally. 7 days of unceasing rain creates possibilities. For what? For transcendence. The master's gaze became distant. Or destruction. The outcome depends on the souls involved in the moment. Batman stood, having gained what he needed from the conversation. Chen Wei isn't her true target, he's bait. A worthy observation. Master Tao remains seated, seemingly at one with the stone beneath him. She tests your understanding as much as she will test your skills. As Batman prepared to depart, the master offered one final insight. She will not strike until the moment is perfect, when rain, moonlight, and position align. When that moment comes, remember that her strength is not in her techniques, but in her absolute commitment to each motion. Where others might doubt, she is certain. Where others hesitate, she has already completed her action. Batman acknowledged the wisdom with a respectful nod before dissolving back into the rainy darkness, leaving the temple garden as undisturbed as he had found it. Most illuminating, Alfred commented once Batman was moving across rooftops again, though I suspect Master Tao shared only what Lady Shiva wished him to share. Agreed. She's using him to establish the parameters of our eventual confrontation. Batman paused at a gargoyle overlooking Chen's restaurant, where business continued despite the hour and weather. She wants me to understand the stakes. A philosophical battle as much as a physical one. Alfred's tone suggested he was consulting additional references. I've been researching this parting of veils concept. According to several mystical traditions, it refers to a moment when the boundaries between life and death become temporarily permeable. Batman watched as Chen Wei himself emerged briefly from the restaurant, surrounded by bodyguards as he entered a waiting car. The crime lord's face was tensed with fear despite his protective entourage. He knew what had happened to his peers. She's planning something beyond these assassinations, Batman concluded. Something that culminates with our confrontation. Sir, if I may suggest, perhaps the direct approach might be appropriate in this instance? Alfred rarely advocated confrontation, which made his suggestion notable. Lady Shiva clearly wishes to be found. On her terms. Perhaps establishing contact on yours might disrupt her carefully orchestrated performance. Batman considered this as he tracked Chen's car through Chinatown's narrow streets. She'll have considered that possibility. Any obvious attempt to reach her would be anticipated. Then perhaps something less obvious? A message delivered through channels she wouldn't expect you to utilize? The idea took shape quickly. Not a message, Alfred, an invitation. Within the hour, Batman had established a new pattern across Gotham. Rather than hunting for Shiva directly, he made himself visible in ways that spoke directly to her sensibilities. He intervened in 3 street-level confrontations, using techniques from the same obscure martial arts lineage that had shaped Shiva's early training. Movements that would be recognizable to her specific expertise. At each location, he left a subtle trace, a precise arrangement of water droplets on vertical surfaces that would dissipate within minutes, but would form specific characters when viewed from exactly the right angle. Together, they communicated coordinates and a time, using a cipher known only to the highest level initiates of certain martial traditions. Rather elegant, if I may say so, Alfred approved as Batman completed the 3rd such message. Speaking her language, as it were, you'll recognize the invitation for what it is. Batman surveyed his work. invisible to ordinary observation but unmistakable to someone of Shiva's caliber. A chance to face me, away from her employer's agenda, and you believe she'll accept this disruption of her carefully laid plans. Her artistry demands it. Batman moved again, heading toward the coordinates he had just communicated, an abandoned dojo in Gotham's Old Town district. The opportunity to test herself against an opponent who understands her methods will be too compelling to ignore. The dojo had once been renowned throughout Asia before its master had died without a successor worthy of its legacy. Now it stood empty, its training floors untouched for years, while rain leaked through its increasingly deteriorated roof. Yet the space retained a certain dignity, the walls still bearing calligraphy describing principles of balance and harmony, the worn wooden floors carrying the memory of countless hours of disciplined practice. Batman entered through the roof access, allowing himself to become part of the rain that penetrated the building's compromised structure. Water streamed from his cape as he descended to the main training floor, the cowl's systems automatically adjusting to the dim light filtered through paper screens and broken windows. "She's already here," he sub-vocalized to Alfred, having detected the subtlest shift in the rainfall pattern within the dojo, a disruption that could only be caused by another presence disturbing the air currents. "Then best behavior, sir," Alfred replied dryly. "One doesn't keep a lady waiting." Batman moved to the center of the training floor and assumed a neutral stance, not defensive, not aggressive, but perfectly balanced. Then he did something few ever witnessed. He removed his cowl, allowing the rain to touch Bruce Wayne's face directly. "A gesture of respect," came a voice like silk drawn over steel. Lady Shiva emerged from shadows that seemed insufficient to have concealed her, moving with such fluid grace that she appeared to be part of the rainfall itself. Or perhaps strategy? Removing the protection of your mask while retaining your armored suit. Bruce met her gaze steadily. She was dressed simply in training clothes of darkest blue, her only concession to her deadly reputation being the sash of deep crimson at her waist. In her presence, even the rain seemed to move with more purpose, each droplet falling with precise intention. "Neither," he replied truthfully, an acknowledgement that what happens here is between us as individuals, not symbols. Shiva considered this, with a hint of a smile. "Yet we are both symbols, are we not? You, the protector who refuses to cross the ultimate line. Me, the artist who celebrates that line as the moment of purest truth." She moved in a slow circle around him, her footsteps making no sound, despite the puddles forming on the wooden floor. 4 men who corrupted everything they touched are now freed from their limitations. Their organizations will reform under new leadership that understands the value of discipline and respect. "Orchestrated by your employer," Bruce stated. "A woman of vision," Shiva acknowledged. "One who sees Gotham's potential beneath its decay. But her plans are merely context for the greater purpose." Bruce remained centered as she circled. The parting of veils. This earned him a look of genuine approval. "You've spoken with Master Tao, good. Then you understand that what happens between us transcends mere combat. When two who have achieved our level of mastery meet during such a moment," she gestured to the intensifying rain, "the outcome ripples beyond physical consequences. You believe our fight will have spiritual significance." Bruce kept his tone neutral. "I know it will." Shiva completed her circle, coming to stand directly before him. "For 7 days and nights, the rain has cleansed this city. 4 corrupt souls have been released from their earthly prisons. The conditions are perfect for the 5th night, when 2 opposites meet in perfect balance. Bruce understood her meaning with sudden clarity. You never intended to kill Chen Wei. The 5th target is me. Not to kill, she corrected. To test. There is a difference that perhaps only we can truly appreciate. Her eyes held his with unwavering intensity. I've studied you, Batman. Your techniques, your philosophy. You've walked to the edge of the ultimate truth, but never embraced it fully. Tonight offers you that opportunity. I don't take lives, yet you understand death more intimately than most who deal in it regularly. Shiva's voice carried no judgment, only observation. You've crafted your entire existence around the death of your parents, not merely avenging it, but preventing its recurrence in others' lives. Death shaped you as thoroughly as it has shaped me. Bruce felt the conversation shifting into dangerous territory. Not physically dangerous, but philosophically treacherous. What do you want, Shiva? To experience the perfect moment. She stepped back and assumed a formal stance that Bruce recognized from traditions so ancient they had no recorded founders. To test myself against the only person in Gotham worthy of the effort. If I prevail, my path is validated. If you prevail, perhaps there is merit in your restraint that I have not yet perceived. Lightning flashed through the broken windows, illuminating the space between them. In that electric moment, Bruce saw beyond Shiva's deadly reputation to something more complex. A woman who had dedicated herself to understanding life's greatest mystery through direct experience rather than philosophical distance. And after? He asked, knowing there would be consequences beyond their immediate confrontation. Cha, she replied with serene certainty. One of us will be changed. The rain will stop. Gotham will continue, though perhaps on a slightly different path. A rare smile touched her lips. My employer believes she is using me to reshape the city's criminal hierarchy. She does not understand that I allowed her to bring me here for this moment, this opportunity to test the limits of my understanding against yours. Bruce replaced his cowl, becoming Batman once more. I won't kill you, no matter the outcome. I know. Shiva's stance shifted subtly, becoming somehow both more relaxed and more dangerous. That certainty is what makes you a worthy opponent. Your commitment to your path equals my commitment to mine. Without further discussion, she attacked. Or rather, she moved, and space itself seemed to bend around her intention. Batman met her with equal precision, their initial exchange lasting less than 2 seconds, but containing 6 distinct techniques and counters. They separated, each having tested the other's fundamental awareness. Excellent, she approved. You perceive the spaces between movements. Their second engagement lasted longer, a flowing exchange of strikes and deflections that resembled a conversation more than combat. Each technique Batman employed was met with perfect countering pressure, not blocking but redirecting, using his own energy to create openings he then had to defend. Similarly, Shiva found her normally decisive strikes turned aside with subtle shifts that demonstrated Batman's deep understanding of momentum and balance. Water flew from their movements, creating momentary sculptures in the air that caught the intermittent lightning. Their breathing remained controlled, neither showing exertion despite the increasing complexity of their exchange. Most opponents, Shiva commented during a momentary separation, are defeated by their own tension. Their fear of death creates resistance. that I simply redirect. You've mastered that fear, channeled it into awareness instead. Batman used the brief pause to reassess. She was testing his fundamentals, assessing every aspect of his training before committing to her true purpose. Your employer, who is she? Shiva allowed the change in conversation as they circled each other. Someone with resources and vision. Someone who understands that Gotham's criminal element requires pruning rather than elimination. A slight smile. Someone who wishes to meet you, should you survive tonight. Their next exchange escalated in intensity, moving beyond fundamental techniques into the rare territory of mastery where intuition replaced thought. Batman felt himself operating at the very edge of his capabilities, each movement requiring perfect timing and absolute commitment. Shiva moved like water given purpose, her strikes coming from angles that should have been impossible to generate from her previous positions. "You've studied the desert wind technique," he observed after narrowly avoiding a sequence that would have rendered his left arm temporarily useless. "As have you." She flowed around his counter, using the momentum to launch a new attack, though your interpretation shows the influence of Kirigi's modifications. They were speaking in a language few could understand, the subtle dialectics of martial traditions that had been refined through centuries of dedicated study. Each recognized in the other not just technical proficiency, but deep comprehension of the principles underlying physical movement. As their confrontation intensified, the dojo seemed to respond, or perhaps it was the storm outside growing stronger. The rain falling with increased urgency, as though nature itself was invested in the outcome. Lightning flashed more frequently, thunder rolling through the space between them like cosmic commentary. "The moment approaches," Shiva said during another brief separation. Both were breathing more deeply now, though neither showed signs of fatigue. Rather, they had reached a state of heightened awareness where physical limitations began to recede. "The veil thins. Can you feel it?" Batman could, though he would have described it differently. There was a quality to the air, to the light, to the very space between them, that had taken on an almost tangible presence. Their movements left after-images in the rain-laden atmosphere, trails of intention that lingered momentarily before dissipating. "This isn't mysticism," he replied, countering her philosophical framing. "It's neurochemical, the brain's response to sustained focus and physical exertion." Shiva's laugh was genuine, a sound rarely heard by those who survived encountering her. Always the rationalist, yet you move through shadows as though they were living things. You use fear as tangibly as I use pressure points. Her eyes held his through the cowl. "We both know there are truths beyond the material." Their next exchange transcended technical description. They moved in perfect counterpoint, each action creating the space for the other's response, as though they were performing a dance choreographed by forces beyond themselves. The rain within the dojo began to move strangely, droplets hanging suspended momentarily in the air currents generated by their passage. Batman felt his awareness expanding beyond the immediate confrontation. He perceived not just Shiva's next lightly move, but the pattern of their entire exchange, past, present, and potential futures interweaving in a complex tapestry of cause and effect. This was the state ancient texts described as no mind, where action occurred from perfect understanding rather than conscious decision. "You feel it now," Shiva observed, her own movements achieving an uncanny fluidity. The dissolution of boundaries. Indeed, Batman experienced a peculiar sensation of simultaneity, as though he existed in multiple states at once. He was Bruce Wayne and Batman, student and master, defender and aggressor. More disturbing, he sensed similar multiplicity in Shiva, the dedicated student she had once been, the perfect killer she had become, and something else, something potential that existed in the space between certainty. Their movements accelerated beyond what observers could have tracked, creating a harmony of opposites that seemed to affect the very air around them. The rain within the dojo began to move in patterns, responding to the energy generated by their exchange. Lightning flashed continuously now, no longer individual strikes, but a sustained illumination that cast everything in stark relief. At the apex of their confrontation, when neither could intensify further without crossing into lethal intent, Shiva suddenly changed the pattern. Rather than continuing the escalation, she executed a technique of such perfect timing and minimal force that Batman found himself completely immobilized. Not through overwhelming power, but through the precise neutralization of every counter he might employ. For a suspended moment, they were perfectly still. Batman unable to move, Shiva requiring no further action to maintain complete control. A single strike to any of a dozen precisely positioned nerve clusters would end his life instantly. They both knew it with absolute certainty. "This," she said softly, "is the moment of truth. The perfect balance between life and death, action and inaction." The storm outside reached its crescendo, rain lashing through the broken windows and lightning illuminating them in stark silhouette. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the completion of what had been set in motion. Then, with the same perfect economy that defined all her movements, Shiva released him and stepped back. "I could end your journey here," she stated without pride or regret, "but that would diminish the truth I've spent my life pursuing." Batman regained his center, awareness still operating at heightened levels. What truth? That death is not the only perfect moment, that there is equal mastery in choosing life. Her expression held rare openness. "You've shown me something I had not fully considered, that restraint can require greater mastery than action." The storm began to subside, the rain's intensity gradually lessening as though responding to the resolution between them. The quality of light changed, the oppressive darkness giving way to a more nuanced interplay of shadow and illumination. "Your path and mine will cross again," Shiva said, moving toward the entrance with the same fluid grace that characterized everything she did. "When that happens, we will both have evolved further in our understanding." Batman remained where he was, respecting the conclusion she had chosen. "And your employer, the consolidation she planned, will proceed, though perhaps with more subtlety than originally intended." Shiva paused at the threshold. "She underestimated you, as most do. That error has been corrected in my report." "Her name?" A slight smile. "Another time, perhaps, when Gotham has healed from its recent wounds and is ready for the next evolution." With that, she was gone. Not with dramatic flair, but with such perfect integration into the natural movement of rain and shadow that she simply ceased to be present. Batman stood alone in the dojo as the storm continued its gradual cessation outside. The rain fell more gently now, cleansing rather than overwhelming. He touched his cowl's communication system. "Alfred, it's over. Are you all right, sir?" The concern in Alfred's voice was evident despite his measured tone. Yes. Batman moved to the entrance, looking out at Gotham as the rain began to clear. She could have killed me. She chose not to. A philosophical victory rather than a physical one? Something like that. Batman watched as the first breaks appeared in the cloud cover, allowing glimpses of stars beyond the storm. She said something about restraint requiring greater mastery than action. A sentiment I've expressed on numerous occasions, Alfred noted dryly, though perhaps with less dramatic context. Batman smiled slightly. She'll be back, Alfred. Whatever her employer is planning, this was just the opening move. Then we shall be prepared. The sounds of the Batcave's systems came through the communication link. I've taken the liberty of preparing some tea for your return, Earl Grey with honey. I find it particularly restorative after philosophical confrontations with deadly assassin. Thank you, Alfred. Batman looked once more at the dojo, where something profound had occurred. Not just a battle averted, but an understanding reached. The nature of that understanding would require considerable reflection. Before departing, he walked slowly around the perimeter of the training floor, his enhanced vision cataloging details that most would miss. Faint footprints in the dampness showed the perfect balance of Shiva's movements, the precise distribution of weight that allowed her to move as though gravity itself made exceptions for her mastery. His own tracks, while disciplined, revealed the slightest differences in approach, adaptability where she embodied purity. In one corner, a calligraphy scroll had partially unrolled in the moisture, revealing an ancient axiom that seemed particularly relevant. The highest victory is not to defeat an enemy, but to make an enemy your friend. Not friendship, perhaps, but understanding had been achieved tonight. A recognition between two masters that transcended their opposing philosophies. Batman touched the scroll gently, re-rolling it with respect before stepping out into the gradually clearing night. The rain had softened to a gentle mist that caught the emerging moonlight, transforming Gotham's harsh geometry into something almost ethereal. From certain angles, the city seemed to shimmer between states, the corrupt metropolis it often was, and the beacon of hope it might become. Commissioner Gordon is requesting an update, Alfred informed him as he grappled to a higher vantage point. He reports that Chen Wei has emerged from hiding, apparently convinced the immediate danger has passed. Tell him the threat has been redirected, Batman replied, pausing atop a water tower that offered views across 3 districts. The assassinations will stop, though the power structure has already been altered. And shall I mention your philosophical tete-a-tete with one of the world's deadliest killers? Just say that Lady Shiva's business in Gotham is concluded for now. Batman watched as emergency vehicles below began deactivating their lights, the crisis response winding down as the storm subsided. Though I suspect we've only seen the opening moves in a much longer game. As he traversed the gradually drying rooftops, Batman found himself replaying moments from the confrontation, not just analyzing techniques and counters, but considering the philosophical weight behind each exchange. Shiva fought not merely to defeat opponents, but to perfect herself. Each kill an expression of her understanding of life's fundamental impermanence. Her precision was not cruelty, but its opposite. A respect for the moment of transition between states that most people feared to contemplate. His own approach had always been different, preserving life as the highest principle, finding justice without crossing the line into judgment. Yet tonight had revealed unexpected common ground, between these seemingly opposite paths. Both required absolute commitment, both demanded perfect awareness, both sought truth though through different means. Batman paused at the edge of the financial district, where water still streamed from the mouths of gargoyles perched on century-old buildings. These stone sentinels had watched over Gotham through countless storms, their expressions frozen in eternal vigilance. He found himself wondering what they had witnessed over the decades. How many confrontations between opposing forces. How many moments when the city had balanced between decay and renewal. "Alfred," he said quietly, "what do you make of Shiva's comments about the parting of veils? Could there be something more to this storm than natural weather patterns?" A thoughtful pause preceded Alfred's response. There are traditions across many cultures that recognize certain moments when boundaries seem thinner, between seasons, between years, between states of being. Science may explain the meteorological conditions, but meaning... He let the thought hang briefly. Meaning is what we bring to experience, I suppose. Batman considered this as he moved again, using his grapnel to swing between buildings in a graceful arc that momentarily placed him within the mist itself, suspended between earth and sky, motion and stillness. She mentioned an employer with resources and vision, he noted. Someone positioning themselves to reshape Gotham's criminal hierarchy. Indeed. I've been analyzing potential candidates based on recent financial movements and property acquisitions. Several possibilities emerge, though none with definitive connections to someone of Lady Shiva's caliber. Keep looking. Focus on individuals with ties to both legitimate business interests and known criminal enterprises. Someone building bridges rather than walls between Gotham's dual economies. He descended to street level briefly, moving through an alley where the receding rainwater had revealed discarded artifacts of city life. Newspapers, food containers, a child's forgotten toy. These mundane objects carried their own significance in the wake of what had transpired. Reminders of the ordinary lives that continued regardless of the cosmic dramas played out in shadows above them. A stray cat emerged from behind a dumpster, regarding Batman with neither fear nor particular interest before delicately picking its way across puddles. In that small creature's self-contained confidence, Batman recognized something of Shiva's perfect self-possession. The certainty that came from knowing exactly what one was and accepting it completely. He continued his journey homeward, passing through neighborhoods where lights were beginning to appear in windows as Gotham's early risers prepared for their day. A baker opened his shop, the warm glow and scent of fresh bread creating an island of domestic tranquility. An elderly woman swept water from her storefront steps, nodding respectfully as Batman's shadow passed briefly overhead. These small ceremonies of ordinary life stood in contrast to the night's philosophical confrontation, yet they were connected by invisible threads of meaning. As he approached the outskirts of the city, where urban density gave way to the more spacious grounds of Wayne Manor, Batman noted how the landscape itself seemed transformed by the 7 nights of rain. Stream beds that had been dry for months now carried clear, swift water. Trees that had appeared dormant now showed the first hints of new growth. The cleansing had been literal as well as metaphorical, washing away accumulated pollutants and preparing the ground for renewal. Alfred was waiting at the cave entrance, a steaming cup of tea in one hand and a selection of medical supplies in the other. His expression, as always, balanced concern with respect for Bruce's autonomy. No injuries to treat, Batman assured him as he removed the cowl. At least, none visible. Those are often the most significant kind, sir, Alfred observed, setting down the medical kit but maintaining his grip on the tea. The philosophical wounds that don't show on scans. Bruce accepted the offered cup, inhaling the fragrant steam before taking a careful sip. The familiar taste, bergamot tempered with honey, provided an anchor to routine after a night that had been anything but ordinary. "She could have killed me, Alfred," he said simply, moving to the computer array where preliminary analyses of the confrontation were already running. Not just in theory. There was a moment of perfect alignment where no counter was possible. Alfred's expression remained composed, though the slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his response to this confirmation of how close death had come. Yet here you stand, contemplating the experience rather than becoming part of it. I gather we have Lady Shiva's philosophical curiosity to thank for that particular mercy. Not mercy, Bruce corrected, removing his gauntlets to feel the warmth of the teacup directly. Respect. She recognized something in my approach that made her reconsider her own. He studied the rain-streaked armor he'd removed, finding in its patterned moisture a record of the night's events. She said restraint can require greater mastery than action, a conclusion I devoutly hope takes permanent root in her philosophy, Alfred noted dryly, though I suspect her definition of restraint and ours may continue to differ somewhat in application. Bruce smiled slightly at the understatement. She'll return to Gotham, whatever her employer is planning. Tonight was just the opening move in a longer strategy. Then we shall be prepared, Alfred replied with simple certainty. He gestured toward the cave's living area where comfortable seating and additional refreshments awaited, though perhaps after some rest and proper nourishment. Even philosophical revelations are better processed with adequate blood sugar. As they moved away from the technical equipment toward this more human space, Bruce felt the weight of the cowl's absence. Not just the physical lightness, but the psychological shift from Batman's singular focus to his more complex identity as both warrior and witness. There was a moment, Alfred, he said quietly, settling into a chair that had been positioned to catch the first natural light beginning to filter through the cave's hidden apertures, when everything aligned perfectly. Not just our physical movements, but something deeper, as though we both glimpsed some fundamental pattern underlying everything else. Alfred nodded, his expression suggesting he understood more than Bruce might have expected. The Japanese call such moments yugen, an awareness of the universe too profound for words, when the veil between ordinary perception and deeper truth momentarily thins. The parting of veils, Bruce murmured, watching how the growing daylight interacted with lingering shadows in the cave. Not mysticism, but heightened perception. Perhaps the distinction matters less than we typically imagine, Alfred suggested, refreshing Bruce's tea from a pot kept warm on a nearby surface. The experience itself remains true, regardless of how we categorize it. They sat in contemplative silence as dawn fully established itself, transforming the cave's atmosphere from nocturnal sanctuary to transitional space. Soon, Bruce would sleep, processing the night's experiences in dreams before awakening to continue the investigation into Shiva's mysterious employer. But for now, this moment of quiet reflection provided its own necessary transition, the integration of what had been learned into what was already known. The rain finally stopped completely as morning established itself, leaving Gotham glistening in the clear light of a new day. From the highest openings in the cave, Bruce could glimpse the city in the distance, its people emerging to reclaim streets washed clean by 7 nights of unceasing rain. Whatever had been set in motion, whatever parting of veils had occurred during his confrontation with Shiva, was now complete, its consequences yet to be fully understood. As the sun rose fully above the horizon, Bruce allowed himself the luxury of simple appreciation for Alfred's steadfast presence, for the sanctuary of the cave, for the city that continued despite its many challenges. He carried with him not just the physical weariness of the night's exertions, but the contemplative weight of having glimpsed truths that existed in the spaces between certainties, in the perfect balance between opposing forces that, for a brief moment, had found harmony in their difference. "Rest now, sir," Alfred suggested gently, recognizing the subtle signs of exhaustion that Bruce himself would never acknowledge. "Gotham will await your return tonight, hopefully somewhat refreshed by its cleansing." Bruce nodded, finally allowing his shoulders to relax as he finished the last of his tea. In sleep, perhaps, the deeper meanings of the night's encounter would reveal themselves, not through conscious analysis, but through the mind's natural integration of experience into understanding. Like the city outside, he too had been touched by something both challenging and purifying, a confrontation that had somehow left him not diminished, but renewed. As he made his way toward the living quarters, Bruce paused at a point where natural light from above created a perfect circle on the stone floor, a spotlight of sunshine in the subterranean darkness. In that illuminated space, water droplets from his still, damp cape had fallen to create a pattern that, seen from exactly the right angle, resembled the white lotus that was Shiva's calling card. Coincidence, most likely, a random arrangement, given meaning only by perception. Yet in that moment, Bruce allowed himself to wonder if perhaps the boundaries between coincidence and significance were themselves just another veil waiting to be parted by sufficient awareness. Some questions had no definitive answers, only deeper explorations, a truth that both he and Shiva, in their different ways, had dedicated their lives to understanding. As the 7-night rainstorm that accompanied Lady Shiva's presence in Gotham finally subsided, the city emerged cleansed, but forever changed. The philosophical confrontation between Batman and the deadly assassin had left its mark, not just on Bruce Wayne's understanding of justice and restraint, but on the very fabric of Gotham's underworld. With crime lords eliminated and power structures in flux, the delicate ecosystem of Gotham's shadows began to shift. Like water finding new paths after a storm, those who dwelled in darkness sought fresh territories and opportunities, and as surface waters receded, something ancient stirred in the depths below the city. The cleansing rains that had washed Gotham's streets had also swelled the underground waterways, the forgotten rivers, abandoned subway tunnels, and sprawling sewer systems that formed a labyrinth beneath the city's foundations. This rising tide disturbed realms rarely touched by light, awakening creatures who preferred the comfort of murky depths to the harsh scrutiny of the world above. Among them, one figure moved with primal purpose through the subterranean currents. Waylon Jones, known to Gotham as Killer Croc, had long made his home in these shadowed waters, but the recent floods had disturbed more than just his territory. They had awakened ancient memories, encoded in his unique biology, calling him towards something buried deep beneath Gotham's foundations. As Batman recovered from his philosophical battle with Lady Shiva, finding renewed purpose in her unexpected restraint, a different kind of challenge was emerging from the muck and shadow. Where Shiva had tested his mind and spirit, Croc would test his understanding of what truly separates man from beast, and whether compassion could extend even to those Gotham had labeled monsters. The rain had stopped, but the waters continued to shift below, carrying whispers of something primordial stirring in the darkness, something that called to both Waylon Jones's human mind and his reptilian instincts, something that would soon draw Batman from the philosophical heights of his encounter with Shiva down into the most primitive depths of Gotham's forgotten underworld. A new journey was about to begin, one that would descend from the rain-washed rooftops where Batman had contemplated the delicate balance between opposing philosophies, down into the murky waters where survival itself was the only truth that mattered. From the ghost of the rain to beneath the murk, Batman's path would continue, a guardian moving between worlds, always seeking understanding in the spaces between light and darkness. Rain fell upon Gotham in steady silver sheets, each droplet joining the chorus that had been singing without pause for 6 days and nights. The city's stone gargoyles wept endless tears. Ancient drainage systems groaned under the weight of the deluge, and the sky remained an unbroken canvas of charcoal grey. In the study of Wayne Manor, Bruce Wayne stood before tall windows, watching water cascade down glass panes like liquid veils. His reflection stared back at him, contemplative, patient, a silent guardian waiting for darkness to fall completely. The Meteorological Service has extended the flood warning for another 72 hours, sir. Alfred's voice came from the doorway, precise and proper as always, yet carrying an undercurrent of concern. The Lower East Side is already experiencing significant street flooding. Public Works can scarcely keep pace. Bruce nodded without turning. And 3 more people missing since yesterday. His voice was soft, yet held the weight of responsibility that never lightened. All last seen near drainage outflows or maintenance tunnels. Alfred approached with measured steps, setting down a silver tray bearing a porcelain cup. Steam rose from it in delicate curls. Commissioner Gordon called while you were training. The search teams refused to enter the northern tunnels. They've heard sounds. The butler paused, choosing his words carefully. Sounds they claim aren't human. Waylon Jones isn't entirely human anymore, Alfred. Bruce finally turned from the window, his face illuminated briefly by a flash of distant lightning. At least, that's what he wants everyone to believe. He accepted the offered tea, the warmth of the cup a momentary comfort against the perpetual chill that had settled over Gotham. The flooding has given him access to parts of Gotham's underground he couldn't reach before. He's expanding his territory, and hunting while he does so, Alfred added solemnly, his weathered face grim in the study's muted light. The commissioner mentioned the remains they found near Tricorner Yards, partial at best. Bruce set the untouched tea aside, moving toward the grandfather clock that concealed the passage to the cave below. I need to speak with Douglas Chen. He designed the overflow systems for Gotham's eastern reservoir. If anyone understands how these flood patterns might change the underground landscape, it's him. Mr. Chen has already been quite helpful to the GCPD, I understand, Alfred noted, though perhaps Batman might extract insights the police cannot. He followed Bruce to the clock, his posture straight despite the years that had bent so many others. The cave systems below the east side were never properly mapped. Even the city's official schematics are woefully incomplete. That's what makes Jones so dangerous right now, Bruce replied as the clock swung open, revealing the stone steps beyond. He knows Gotham's underground better than anyone. The flooding is changing those pathways daily, creating new hunting grounds only he can navigate. The cool, damp air of the cave greeted them as they descended. Unlike the chaotic deluge above, the water here moved with ancient purpose, the same steady flow that had carved these chambers over millennia. Bats chittered softly in the distant ceiling, undisturbed by the human presence they had grown accustomed to sharing their sanctuary with. I've taken the liberty of updating your suit's environmental systems. Alfred gestured toward the illuminated case where the bat suit waited. The rebreather has been modified for extended submersion. The thermal lining has been reinforced as well. The water temperature in those tunnels is dangerously low. His voice carried the careful concern he would never directly express. And I've upgraded the sonic disruption device. If Mr. Jones's physiology continues to evolve toward his reptilian namesake, certain frequencies should prove disorienting to him. Bruce's hand rested momentarily on Alfred's shoulder, a rare gesture of appreciation between men who communicated as much through silence as through words. Have the Batmobile ready for deployment in 30 minutes. I'll scan the city drainage maps one more time before I leave. Very good, sir. Alfred moved toward the computer array, his reflected image multiplied across the dark screens. And might I suggest keeping the comms open throughout this particular expedition? The acoustics in those tunnels could prove challenging. Bruce nodded, already beginning the methodical process of donning the suit, each piece a layer of protection, each buckle and seal a ritual of transformation. The rain continued its rhythm above, a constant reminder of the forces reshaping Gotham below, street level. Forces that had awakened a predator who moved through water and darkness with terrible purpose. On the main screen, the complex network of Gotham's underground infrastructure glowed in pale blue light. Official tunnels in solid lines, theoretical pathways in dotted ones, and vast areas marked only with question marks. Somewhere in that labyrinth, Killer Croc had established a new domain, turning floodwaters into his private hunting grounds. Batman would need to become the greater predator in the dark. Douglas Chen's apartment overlooked Robinson Park, though tonight the view offered only curtains of rain and the occasional sweep of headlights from emergency vehicles below. The city engineers startled visibly when he turned from his kitchen counter to find Batman standing in his living room, water still dripping from the dark cape. I didn't hear you. Shen caught himself, setting down his coffee mug with a shaking hand. Of course I didn't. The commissioner said you might come, but I didn't expect. He gestured vaguely at the imposing figure now occupying the space between his bookshelves. Tell me about the northeastern tunnel junction, Batman said, his voice deliberately modulated to be firm but not frightening. Chen was an ally, not a subject of intimidation. The blueprints show 3 main convergence points, but your report to the city council mentioned a 4th. Chen nodded, professional interest overcoming his initial shock. He moved to a drafting table by the window where maps and diagrams lay scattered beneath paperweights. The 4th junction isn't on any official map. It was part of the original canal system from the 1800s, before they converted much of it to sewers. His finger traced a route through the tangle of lines. We only discovered it 5 years ago during the harbor renovation project. The city decided not to publicize it, too many urban explorers already risking their lives down there. And now it's completely flooded, Batman observed, studying the markings. Not completely, Chen corrected, reaching for another overlay. That's what makes it unusual. The old stonework created a natural dam effect. Parts of this section actually remain dry even when everything around it floods. He pointed to a large circular area. This chamber in particular. We think it was some kind of maintenance hub for the canal workers. It sits about 15 feet higher than the surrounding tunnels. Batman committed the location to memory. The missing persons were all last seen within a half-mile radius of this area. Chen's expression darkened. I know. I've been helping the police narrow down possible locations where Jones might be keeping... He couldn't finish the sentence, the implication too grim. He doesn't keep them, Batman said quietly. Not for long. The engineer swallowed hard. There's something else you should know. 2 days ago, my team sent a remote submersible camera into the northern overflow channel. We lost contact almost immediately, but not before it transmitted some footage. He moved to his laptop, pulling up a video file. The police have this, but I'm not sure they understand what it shows. The footage was dark and turbulent, showing murky water and crumbling brickwork. The submersible's lights illuminated floating debris and the occasional fish that had been swept in from the harbor. Then something moved across the frame, too quick to identify clearly, but large enough to create a pressure wave that sent the camera tumbling. That could be anything, Batman commented. Debris carried by the current. Keep watching, Shan said grimly. When the camera stabilized, it was facing a different section of tunnel, and there, on a partially collapsed ledge above the waterline, lay a collection of objects. Watches, wallets, jewelry, phones, personal belongings arranged in careful, deliberate rows. He's collecting trophies, Batman said. Jen nodded. Not the behavior of a mindless animal. Whatever Jones has become, he's still thinking, still human in some ways. He paused the footage. This section is near the old pumping station on Gull Street. If you follow the maintenance tunnel eastward about 400 yards, you'll reach that elevated chamber I showed you. Batman committed the route to memory. Have you shared this theory with the GCPD? I tried, Chan sighed, but they're overwhelmed with the flooding city-wide, and to be honest, most of them are too afraid to go down there, especially now. He looked up at Batman with sudden intensity. You need to understand something about those tunnels. The acoustics are unpredictable. Sound carries differently when the water levels change. Everything echoes, but not consistently. You might hear something that seems close when it's actually far away, or miss something that's right behind you. I'm familiar with distorted acoustics, Batman assured him. Is there anything else I should know? Chen hesitated. There's a woman, Mara Ellis. She was with a maintenance crew 3 days ago when Jones attacked them. She's the only one who escaped. She's at Gotham General, still in shock, but she kept repeating something that might help you. He reached for a notepad. The nurses wrote it down. She said, "He comes when the pipes knock. 3 times, then he comes." Batman's eyes narrowed behind the cowl. Water hammer. When the pressure changes suddenly in the pipes, they make a knocking sound. Exactly. Chin nodded, impressed. Jones might be using sudden pressure changes as a hunting strategy, forcing water through certain routes to drive his prey where he wants them. The engineer looked troubled. Or maybe he's just learned to recognize the sound as a sign that humans are nearby, manipulating the water flow. Either way, it's a pattern. Something I can use. Batman moved toward the window, capes settling around him like folded wings. The GCPD should evacuate all buildings with sub-basements within a 5-block radius of each disappearance. I've already suggested as much to Commissioner Gordon, Chen replied, but people are reluctant to leave their homes during the flooding, even with a monster beneath them. He hesitated. Can you stop him? really stop him, because Jones is getting stronger down there, more adapted to that environment. And these tunnels, they've been his home for years. He knows them better than anyone. No, Batman said, his hand resting on the window frame. He doesn't. With that, he was gone, leaving only a lingering shadow and the sound of rain against glass. The Batmobile cut through flooded streets like a midnight sentinel, its modified engine nearly silent, despite the power it commanded. Water parted before its passage, creating momentary wakes that quickly subsided back into the uniform sheet covering much of downtown. Batman guided it with practiced precision, his attention divided between the road and the data scrolling across the onboard displays. The hospital records on Mara Ellis are concerning. Alfred's voice came through the comm system, clear despite the storm. Severe lacerations to her lower extremities, consistent with claw marks, but also unusual bacterial infections the doctors are still working to identify. Wayland's condition continues to progress, Batman replied, steering around an abandoned vehicle. His physiology is becoming increasingly reptilian, including oral bacteria normally found in Komodo dragons and other predatory lizards. Charming, Alfred commented dryly. Mrs. Ellis's attending physician notes that she remains in an agitated state, refusing sedation. She insists it wasn't just teeth and claws that Jones attacked with. Batman's expression remained impassive behind the cowl, but his grip on the steering wheel tightened imperceptibly. Many reptiles have secondary attack methods: constriction, venom, even specialized saliva with anticoagulant properties. He turned the vehicle toward the eastern waterfront district. I need to speak with her. I anticipated as much, sir, Alfred replied. I've taken the liberty of ensuring her room at Gotham General faces an accessible exterior wall, 5th floor, east wing. The nursing station adjacent to her room should be changing shifts in approximately 12 minutes. The ghost of a smile crossed Batman's face. Thank you, Alfred. I have also compiled the tidal information for Gotham Harbor for the next 6 hours, the butler continued. High tide comes at 2:17 IEDM, which will further raise water levels in the lower tunnels. If you intend to venture below ground, sir, I would strongly suggest doing so before midnight. Batman checked the vehicle's chronometer. 10:43 p.m. Understood. The Batmobile slowed as it approached Gotham General Hospital, its exterior lights dimming until it was merely another shadow in the rain-drenched night. Batman guided it into a narrow service alley, where emergency generators hummed steadily behind chain-link fencing. I'm approaching the hospital now, he informed Alfred. Maintain comms monitoring. Very good, sir. Do be gentle with Miss Ellis. According to her file, she's experienced quite enough trauma for one lifetime. Batman exited the vehicle, grapnel already in hand. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, though the sky remained ominously dark. With practiced efficiency, he ascended the hospital's eastern facade, the grapnel finding purchase despite slick surfaces. Water ran in rivulets down his cape as he climbed, each movement calculated to avoid detection by patients or staff who might glance out into the storm. The 5th floor window revealed a dimly lit hospital room, its single occupant, a woman who sat rigidly upright in her bed despite the late hour. Bandages wrapped her lower legs, and an IV stand beside her dispensed fluids and antibiotics. Her gaze was fixed on the wall opposite her bed, her expression haunted by memories too recent to have faded. Batman tapped softly on the glass, just enough to draw her attention without startling her. Mara Ellis turned, and though her eyes widened at the sight of the dark figure at her window, she showed no fear, only a strange, desperate relief. She reached for the window latch with trembling hands. "You came," she whispered as the window slid open. "They said you might, but I didn't believe." Her voice was hoarse, as though she had been screaming for hours before falling silent. "I need to know about Wayland Jones," Batman said, keeping his voice low as he entered the room. "About how he attacked your team." Mara's gaze dropped to her bandaged legs. "We were checking the pumping station near Dillon Street. Standard procedure during heavy rains." Her words came in short, clipped sentences, as though longer ones required more strength than she possessed. "The water was already up to our waists in some sections. Rodriguez went ahead to check the main valve. We heard him scream, then... nothing." She reached for a plastic cup on her bedside table, hands shaking so badly that water sloshed over the sides. Batman steadied it for her, a momentary gesture of compassion in the midst of necessary interrogation. "We tried to get out," she continued after drinking, "but something was moving through the water, so fast, like it knew exactly where we were even in the dark." Her eyes took on a distant quality. "Torres had the flashlight. He was right next to me. Then he wasn't, just gone. Pulled under without even a splash." "How did you escape?" Batman asked quietly. "The knocking," she replied, her gaze suddenly intense. "In the pipes. 3 knocks, then he came. Every time. I realized he was using the pressure changes to navigate, so when I heard it the 3rd time," her voice caught, "I climbed. There was an old maintenance ladder, rusted but still attached to the wall. I went up while he went for Matthews. I kept climbing until I found a service passage, crawled until I reached a street grate." Batman nodded, processing the information. "You said it wasn't just teeth and claws. What else did you see?" Mara's expression tightened with recalled horror. "His skin. It wasn't just scaled anymore. It was changing, adapting to the water, and his eyes. They had these membranes that closed sideways like a crocodile's, but worst was his jaw." She unconsciously touched her own face. It extended, unhinged like a snake's. He took Torres' whole head in one. She couldn't finish. "You've helped more than you know," Batman said, moving back toward the window. "Gotham General will transfer you to the secure wing tomorrow. You'll be safe there." "Wait," she called softly, reaching out a hand. "There's one more thing. When he attacked, he spoke. Not just growls or that animal voice people talk about. Real words." Her expression clouded with confusion. "He said, 'Not yours anymore, mine now,' like he was claiming territory." Batman paused at the window's edge. "Rest now. You're safe here." "Am I?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. "The rain keeps falling, the water keeps rising, and he keeps getting stronger down there, doesn't he?" Batman had no comforting lies to offer. Instead, he simply said, "I'll find him." Then he was gone, leaving only the soft sound of rain against the now closed window. The entrance to Gotham's northeastern drainage system lay hidden beneath an unassuming maintenance shed near the harbor's industrial zone. Batman approached on foot, having left the Batmobile concealed several blocks away. The rain had intensified again, drumming against his cape and cowl with renewed determination, as though the storm itself were trying to warn him away from what lay below. "I'm at the access point," he sub-vocalized into his comlink. Water levels are higher than anticipated. The tide is coming in more rapidly than forecast, Alfred replied, his voice a reassuring presence in Batman's ear. A storm surge from the bay is pushing additional water into the system. May I suggest an alternative entry point? No time, Batman responded, examining the heavy metal grate that covered the access shaft. Jones has established a pattern now. He's hunting methodically, expanding his territory with each victim. He gripped the grate, enhanced strength allowing him to lift what would normally require machinery. The longer we wait, the more people die. The opening revealed a vertical shaft descending into darkness, the bottom obscured by rising water that gleamed dully in the faint light. The smell that rose from below was a complex mixture of brine, decay, and the particular musty scent that belonged uniquely to Gotham's oldest underground structures. Batman secured a line to a nearby structural support and began his descent, the reinforced cable spooling smoothly from his utility belt. The sounds of the city faded with each foot, replaced by the hollow echo of water against ancient stone and the steady drip of moisture from unseen crevices. As he reached the water's surface, he paused, activating the enhanced vision mode in his cowl lenses. The murky liquid below revealed itself in ghostly gradients of blue and green, showing depth and current patterns. He lowered himself further until he was immersed to his chest, the suit's thermal lining immediately compensating for the water's chill. "I'm in," he reported. "Visibility underwater is approximately 2 feet, current moving northeast at 3 knots. The submersible camera's last transmission came from approximately 400 yards in that direction," Alfred confirmed. "Do exercise caution, sir. The structural integrity reports for that section are concerning at best." Batman moved forward, keeping to the narrow maintenance ledge where possible, wading through chest-deep water where it wasn't. His progress was deliberate but silent, each step carefully placed to create minimal disturbance in the water. The tunnel curved gradually eastward, its ancient brickwork occasionally giving way to more modern concrete reinforcements, like geological strata revealing the city's layered history. The sounds here were as Chen had described, distorted and unpredictable. Water flowing through distant passages created hollow moans and whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Batman kept his breathing measured, his senses attuned to any pattern that might emerge from the ambient noise. "Passage narrows ahead," he murmured, approaching a section where the ceiling dipped lower and the water appeared deeper. Signs of recent structural damage, claw marks on supporting columns. "Territorial marking, perhaps," Alfred suggested. "Many reptiles scratch to establish boundaries." Batman examined the gouges in the concrete. "These aren't symbolic, Alfred. They're systematic, testing the structural weaknesses." He ran a gloved finger along one deep furrow. "He's planning something." A sudden sound echoed through the tunnel, a hollow metallic knocking that reverberated off the stone walls. Batman went still, counting silently. 1, 2, 3. "He's hunting," Batman whispered, pressing himself against the tunnel wall, becoming one with the shadows. The water's surface remained unbroken, but Batman's enhanced vision detected a subtle shift in the current. Something large moving beneath, displacing water with barely a ripple. Years of training allowed him to regulate his breathing, his heartbeat, to become as silent and still as the stone that surrounded him. The disturbance in the water moved past his position, heading deeper into the tunnel network. Batman waited until he could no longer detect its presence before continuing forward, now moving with even greater caution. "Sir, the tidal charts indicate you have approximately 50 minutes before the water level rises another 3 feet. Alfred's voice was pitched low in his ear, as though the butler himself were whispering directly beside him. "Understood." Batman pressed onward, following the route Shin had outlined toward the elevated chamber. The passage gradually widened, opening into a junction where multiple tunnels converged. Here, the water ran swifter, channeled by the tunnel design into a central flow that disappeared into a large drainage pipe. Batman paused, studying the configuration. Something wasn't right. The water flow pattern didn't match what should have been happening according to the schematics. Some passages that should have been filling with water stood nearly dry, while others showed signs of recent powerful currents where there should have been only gentle flow. "He's rerouting the water," Batman realized aloud. "Blocking certain channels, opening others. He's not just adapting to the environment, he's reshaping it." "To what end, sir?" Alfred asked. "To create a labyrinth only he can navigate," Batman replied, examining a partially collapsed wall where bricks had been systematically removed. "And to direct anyone who enters toward specific points. A trap, in other words." And Batman was walking into it, knowingly. He continued forward, selecting a passage that showed signs of Croc's alterations. If Jones was herding potential victims along a specific route, following that path might lead directly to his lair, or at least to where he expected prey to be funneled. The tunnel narrowed again, the ceiling dipping so low that Batman had to wade in a half-crouch, the water now reaching his shoulders. His rebreather was ready if full submersion became necessary, but the restricted movement underwater would put him at a severe disadvantage if confronted by Croc. Then, unexpectedly, the passage opened into a larger chamber, just as Chen had described. The ancient maintenance hub for canal workers rose from the water like an island, its stone platform standing a good 15 feet above the current water level. Crumbling brick stairs led upward from the water's edge to this elevated sanctuary. Batman scanned the chamber carefully before approaching. Unlike the tunnels, which had been altered by Jones's crude but effective modifications, this space showed signs of more deliberate arrangement. Objects salvaged from the depths had been brought here and organized. Tools, pieces of machinery, even furniture that must have been carried through the underground network. And on the far wall, illuminated by the ambient light that filtered through grates far above, hung the trophies. Personal belongings of victims arranged in neat rows, watches, jewelry, identification cards, phones, mementos of human lives now ended, displayed like artifacts in a twisted museum. "I've found his lair," Batman reported softly. "No sign of Jones, but this is definitely where he returns after hunting. Any survivors, sir?" Alfred's voice carried cautious hope. Batman surveyed the chamber grimly. "No. Just souvenirs." He approached the stone platform cautiously, testing each step before committing his weight. The stairs were slick with moisture and algae, requiring careful navigation. As he ascended, the sound of water receded slightly, though the constant dripping from overhead maintained the chamber's damp atmosphere. On the platform, Batman conducted a systematic examination, gathering evidence with practiced efficiency. The arrangement of objects revealed more about Jones's deteriorating mental state, a mix of animalistic territorialism and distinctly human collecting behavior. Things were grouped by type, by color, by size, showing a mind still capable of categorization and pattern recognition. Jones's cognitive functions appear more intact than his last psychological evaluation suggested, Batman noted. His behavior shows planning, organization, even aesthetic consideration in how he arranges his trophies. Vend makes him considerably more dangerous than a mere beast, sir, Alfred observed. It makes him predictable, Batman countered. Human patterns can be anticipated, analyzed. A sudden noise from below, water sloshing against stone in a rhythm too regular to be natural. Batman moved silently to the edge of the platform, peering down at the water's surface. For a moment there was nothing. Then a ripple, subtle but distinct, moving toward the chamber's entrance. "He's returning," Batman whispered, retreating to a shadowed alcove near the rear of the platform, cutting off my exit. "Sir, the tide has turned." Alfred's voice carried quiet urgency. "Water levels are rising more rapidly than anticipated. If you're trapped in that chamber—" "I'm not trapped, Alfred," Batman replied, his voice calm and measured. "This is exactly where I need to be." The water's surface broke at last, but not with the violent surge Batman had anticipated. Instead, something emerged with deliberate slowness. First a scaled ridge, then eyes that gleamed yellow-green in the dim light, and finally, the massive form of Waylon Jones, Killer Croc, rising from the depths like some primordial deity of the underworld. He had changed since their last encounter. His mutation had progressed, scales now covering nearly every visible inch of his massive frame. His jaw had elongated further, teeth protruding at irregular angles from lips that could no longer fully close around them. But most striking were his eyes, slitted pupils that adjusted visibly to the low light, surrounded by nictitating membranes that blinked sideways across his gaze. Croc moved toward the stone stairs with a grace that belied his bulk, water streaming from his form as he emerged fully from the flooded chamber floor. In one massive clawed hand he carried something, a leather bag, sodden but still intact, likely belonging to his most recent victim. Batman remained motionless in the shadows, watching as Croc ascended to the platform. The creature moved to his wall of trophies, tilting his head as he considered where to place his new acquisition. With surprising delicacy, he extracted items from the waterlogged bag. A wallet, keys, a smartphone still in its protective case. "Pretty things," Croc rumbled, his voice deeper and more guttural than Batman remembered, yet still recognizably human in its speech patterns. Shiny things for Croc's walls, for Croc's home. The creature arranged the items according to some personal organizational system, stepping back to admire the effect. Then, suddenly, he stiffened, his nostrils flaring as he took in a deep breath. "Bah!" he growled, the words somewhere between statement and threat. He didn't turn, didn't visibly search for the intruder. Instead, he simply stood, massive shoulders rising and falling with each breath. "Smell you." Batman emerged from the shadows, moving with deliberate calm to position himself where retreat back to the water remained possible. "This needs to stop, Waylon," he said, his voice firm but not hostile. "The killing, the trophy-taking." Croc turned then, yellow eyes fixing on the dark night with predatory focus. "My tunnels now," he growled. "My hunting grounds." His massive form seemed to swell, scales rippling as muscles tensed beneath them. "City threw me away, down into the dark. Now dark is mine." "These people did nothing to you," Batman replied, gesturing toward the wall of trophies. They weren't responsible for what happened to you. A low rumbling sound emerged from Croc's chest, something between a laugh and a growl. All the same to Croc, all up there living in the light, all looking away when Croc walked past. He took a heavy step forward, claws scraping against stone. Now they come down to Croc's world. Now they can't look away. Batman held his ground, calculating angles, distances, potential weapons in the environment. The flooding won't last forever, Waylon. The tunnels will drain. GCPD will come in force. Tunnels changing, Croc replied, tapping his temple with one clawed finger in a disturbingly human gesture. Croc changing them, making them stay wet, stay dark, making new home that no one can take away. His lipless mouth stretched in a grotesque smile. Smart Croc, not just animal, not what they think. I know you're not just an animal, Batman said, shifting subtly as Croc continued his approach. That's why you can still make choices, still decide to stop this before more people die. Croc's expression darkened, reptilian features contorting with very human anger. No more talk, he snarled. Bat came to Croc's home. Now Bat is prey. He lunged with startling speed, covering the distance between them in a single bound. Batman evaded by the narrowest margin, diving and rolling across the stone platform as massive claws raked the space where he had stood. The confined space offered little room for Batman's usual acrobatic fighting style. Croc pressed his advantage, each swing of his powerful arms forcing Batman into an increasingly defensive posture. A glancing blow caught Batman's shoulder, the impact sending him staggering back toward the platform's edge. "Sir, the water level has risen another foot." Alfred's voice came with controlled urgency. The emergency services are reporting significant structural failures throughout the Eastern Tunnel network. Batman had no breath to spare for a response. Croc charged again, jaws gaping in a roar that echoed through the chamber. This time, Batman met the charge directly, using Croc's momentum against him. A precisely timed strike to the creature's throat interrupted his roar, followed by a series of blows to nerve clusters that would have incapacitated a normal human. Croc stumbled, but didn't fall. "Stronger now," he growled, shaking off the attack's effects with alarming speed. "Oh, water makes Croc stronger. Dark makes Croc stronger." From his utility belt, Batman extracted the sonic device Alfred had prepared. As Croc lunged again, Batman activated it, sending focused sound waves at a frequency calculated to disorient reptilian sensory systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Croc reeled backward, clawed hands clutching at his head, a howl of pain and confusion tearing from his throat. Batman pressed the advantage, delivering a flying kick to Croc's solar plexus that sent the massive creature staggering toward the platform's edge. For a moment it seemed the confrontation might end there. Croc disoriented and vulnerable, ready to be subdued and return to containment. But a sudden tremor shook the chamber, stone dust raining down from the ceiling as the ancient structure protested against the relentless pressure of the floodwaters. The momentary distraction was all Croc needed. With a roar that was more fury than pain now, he charged through the effects of the sonic device, barreling into Batman with his full weight. Both figures tumbled toward the water below, locked in a deadly embrace as they fell from the platform's edge. The impact with the water's surface was cushioned by Batman's cape, but the real danger came immediately after, Croc's powerful arms wrapping around him, dragging him deeper into the murky depths. Batman activated his rebreather just as water closed over his head, the device supplying oxygen even as Croc attempted to hold him under. Underwater, the creature's strength and agility were magnified. He moved with fluid grace, his mutated form perfectly adapted to this environment. Batman fought against the crushing grip, the suit's reinforced armor creaking under the pressure of Croc's embrace. "Vital signs elevated to concerning levels, sir." Alfred's voice came through the cow's internal speakers, distorted by the water, but still audible. "Suit integrity at 70% and declining." Batman couldn't respond, all his focus directed toward freeing himself from Croc's grasp. The creature's jaws snapped inches from his face, seeking purchase on the cowl. Batman drove an elbow into Croc's throat, simultaneously activating the electrical discharge system built into his gauntlets. The shock rippled through the water, causing Croc to convulse momentarily. His grip loosened enough for Batman to break free, kicking powerfully toward the surface, but Croc recovered quickly, massive tail a new development in his mutation, whipping through the water to intercept Batman's ascent. The impact sent Batman spinning through the murky depths, disorientating him as water pressure built in his ears. Above, the platform where they had fought was now barely visible, the rising floodwaters having nearly reached its level. Croc circled like a shark, yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness as he prepared for another attack. Batman needed to change the dynamics of this fight. In the water, Croc held every advantage. "Alfred," he managed through the rebreather. "The chamber structure. Weakest points? Northeastern support column, sir," Alfred replied instantly. "City records indicate significant erosion of the original limestone." Batman oriented himself in the murky depths, identifying the column Alfred had indicated. As Crack charged again, Batman allowed himself to sink deeper, drawing the creature down with him. At the last possible moment, he pivoted, using Crack's momentum to direct him toward the weakened column. The impact was catastrophic. Croc's massive body hit the ancient stonework with enough force to crack it from base to ceiling. A deep groan echoed through the chamber as the structural integrity finally gave way, followed by a rumbling cascade as sections of the ceiling began to collapse. Batman kicked upward, fighting against the swirling currents created by falling debris. Croc recovered more slowly, momentarily stunned by the impact and confused by the chamber's collapse around him. "Get clear, sir." Alfred's voice carried genuine alarm now. "The entire junction is showing signs of imminent structural failure." Batman broke the water's surface, gasping despite the rebreather as his lungs demanded more oxygen than the device could provide. The platform where Croc had displayed his trophies was now almost completely submerged, water lapping at the macabre collection. A massive scaled hand erupted from the water beside him, clamping around his ankle with crushing force. Batman was dragged under once more, coming face to face with Croc's rage-contorted features. "Destroy Croc's home," the creature snarled, the words somehow clear even underwater. "Croc will destroy Batman had one last countermeasure. A concentrated capsule of liquid nitrogen designed for emergency freezing of mechanical systems. As Croc's jaws gaped wide to deliver a killing bite, Batman crushed the capsule directly against the creature's throat. The effect was instantaneous. The rapid temperature change causing Croc's cold-blooded system to go into shock. His massive body spasmed, grip loosening, as his biological imperative to preserve core temperature overrode his rage. Batman kicked free, orienting himself toward the tunnel entrance had been. The chamber was collapsing rapidly now, large sections of the ceiling giving way to the pressure of tons of water and earth above. He swam with powerful strokes, fighting against debris and current alike. Behind him, barely visible in the turbulent water, Croc's massive form was already beginning to move again. Slower now, but still pursuing, still hunting. The cold had slowed him but not stopped him, his mutated physiology already adapting to the shock. Batman reached the tunnel entrance just as another section of ceiling collapsed, massive stones plummeting into the water with explosive force. The shockwave propelled him forward into the narrow passage, tumbling him through darkness as the chamber behind collapsed completely. "Sir," Alfred's voice registered genuine fear now. "Sir, can you hear me?" Batman fought to regain control, finding purchase against the tunnel wall as the current swept him along. "I'm clear," he managed, voice ragged with exertion. The chamber collapsed. Jones was still inside. "And yet I strongly suspect that won't be the end of him," Alfred replied, relief evident in his tone, despite the grim observation. "The water levels are beginning to stabilize. Emergency services have managed to open the overflow channels to the harbor." Batman allowed himself to be carried by the current, conserving strength as he navigated the flooded passages. "Alert Gordon. Tell him we've contained the immediate threat, but Jones is likely still alive. The collapsed chamber will restrict his movement until he can find new routes." "Already done, sir. The Commissioner is coordinating with Mr. Chen to seal off access points to the affected tunnels." A pause. "May I suggest making your way toward the southern junction? My schematics show an emergency access shaft that should lead to street level near Robbinsville." Batman oriented himself, finding the southward passage through which the current now flowed. "On my way." He swam with measured strokes, each movement carefully calculated to preserve energy while maintaining progress against the persistent current. The journey through the flooded tunnels was long and arduous, the darkness broken only occasionally by faint light filtering through storm drains above. Batman's enhanced vision mode had been damaged in the fight, forcing him to navigate largely by touch and memory. Several times, distant sounds echoed through the tunnel network. Deep, rumbling noises that might have been further structural collapses or might have been something large and powerful still moving through the depths. Finally, the emergency shaft appeared, a vertical tube rising toward street level, its metal ladder rungs slick with moisture but intact. Batman began the ascent, muscles burning with fatigue as he climbed toward the surface world. "GCPD reports all known victims have been accounted for," Alfred informed him as he neared the top. "No survivors, I'm afraid, but at least the families will have closure." Batman pushed against the heavy access cover, emerging into rain that now seemed gentle compared to the chaos below. The street was deserted, emergency vehicles visible several blocks away, where crews worked to manage the flooding. "The rain is finally slackening, sir," Alfred noted. "The meteorological services predict it will taper off by morning." Batman stood for a moment, letting the clean rain wash over him, cleansing the stench and filth of the tunnels from his suit. "It won't be the end, Alfred. Jones will adapt again, find new hunting grounds." "But you've bought time," Alfred replied. "Saved lives that would otherwise have been lost." "Sometimes, sir, that must be enough." Batman nodded silently, knowing the truth in Alfred's words. The Batmobile appeared at the end of the street, responding to his remote signal, its familiar silhouette a welcome sight after the alien landscape below. As he moved toward the vehicle, Batman cast one last glance at the access shaft from which he'd emerged. For a moment he thought he detected movement in the shadows below, a flicker of yellow-green eyes watching from the darkness. But then it was gone, leaving only the sound of rain and the distant rumble of thunder rolling across Gotham's skyline. The battle beneath the murk was over, for now. But, like the city itself, both predators would endure, one dwelling in darkness by choice, the other driven there by circumstance. Their paths would cross again, as inevitable as the rain that fell on Gotham's ancient stones, as certain as the tide that rose and fell in its secret depths. Batman slipped into the Batmobile, the vehicle's systems automatically beginning to dry and clean his suit as the door sealed shut. "Oh, Malfred," he said simply, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over him. "The hunt is over for tonight." "Very good, sir," came the faithful reply. "I'll have hot tea waiting." As the Batmobile moved silently through Gotham's flooded streets, Batman felt the tension gradually leaving his body. Above, the clouds were beginning to break, revealing brief glimpses of stars, reminders that even the darkest storms eventually pass, leaving the eternal sky unchanged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats emerging from Gotham's shadows. But for now, there was the journey home, the promise of Alfred's steady presence, and the knowledge that for this night at least, the city would sleep a little more peacefully beneath the clearing sky. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.